Hi, fellow collectors, and welcome back to another episode of Scott's Soldiers. Like you, I'm often searching the web for auctions or at events where figures or sets are being sold. While most of us are fairly knowledgeable when it comes to market value for what we're looking for, I'm sometimes struck by items marked as rare. It's not that I don't know the meaning of the word rare, but it's often how the word is applied that causes me to take a sober second look, or in some cases, raise an eyebrow. The same response could be said for items which are labeled limited edition, and here I'm guilty as charged, but I'll talk about that further on. I think that these terms can be overstated, leading to panic purchases or overpaying for something. So in my opinion, what is rare? Well, Britain's set number 131, which I showed you in episode 61. But so are one-off figures or sets. Heck, even sometimes something you casted and painted by definition is rare. So is rare only an adjective, a marketing word, a term of endearment, and a subjective one at that? How do we quantify rare if we can't determine the actual number of known figures or sets that exist out there, coupled with their conditions or even provenance? With Britain's number 131, there are 3 known sets to my knowledge, but only 2 are similar and the third is dissimilar. Yet all 3 are rare. There's no debate about that. Does a limited production run of 500 or 250 make something rare? I suppose in another 100 years we may have a more definitive answer when an accounting is done. In this episode, I want to introduce and reintroduce you to items that I have for your consideration. Are they rare or simply limited with a known production quantity? I'll let you be the judge. And while you're holding court on me, think about your own sets and figures afterwards. If you like this episode, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as this will help the channel grow. Until next time. Britain's as a brand has been churning out toy soldiers for over 130 years. Part of the problem of assessing rarity is a lack of reliable, or for that matter, any production statistics on the sets or figures made. Therefore, we are left with guesstimating, anecdotal information, or auction house results to determine rarity. But Britain's is not the only maker who has left us with this information gap. I'm going to start with set number 214 Royal Northwest Mounted Police Winter Dress figures, and these have popped up in episode 7 RCMP figures. According to James Opie's research, this set had a production run from 1920 to 1941. There are no production numbers, so we don't know if 10,000 or 100,000 figures were made. Looking at set 214, we see the painted mustache, the mustard brown winter coat, the pin bayonet. Now next to it is the same set, but let's call it version 2.0, which closed out the series. The overcoat has a greenish hue and the bayonet is more of a shovel versus the pin. In my limited experience, these figures appear from time to time at auction or shows. But is this because the figures are rare or simply being held in private collections? Next up is the classic Britain's 4.7-inch naval gun. These were made from as early as 1902 right through to 1979 and are one of the longest production runs ever. Though several iterations were made over the 70-odd years, what you are looking at is likely the earliest version with the closed spring, no Britain's markings or gun shield, and simply a patent number. Now, given its age and version and functionality, you would think that might make it rare, or at least within the rankings of set number 9730, which had at least 3 versions. But is it? These tend to still pop up in auctions and toy soldier shows. Now, I showed you these 2 sets last summer in episode 47. These are set numbers 9155 and 9160, and were made by Britain's specifically for the Fort Henry gift shop back in the mid-1960s. These sets do not appear in Britain's catalogs and were not sold by its other dealers or retailers. These figures are unique in their poses and are an obvious complement to Britain's Waterloo sets. A number of these Fort Henry sets were found by an OMSS member and were sold at the OMSS Toy Soldier Show on Parade in June 2023. While as a box set these are unique, perhaps even hard to find, but are they rare? As a mint set still tied down, and in the absence of knowing the number of sets ordered by Fort Henry, I would lean to placing them in the limited category with a brush up against rare, again because of the above factors. So let's now compare to what Britons called limited editions. I'll start with these two sets which were made in collaboration with the OMSS and sold to its members. The first is number 18033, Queen's Ranger. This is number 54 of 350. In my opinion, this is a reasonable limited edition rather than rare. And again, this figure was initially available only to OMSS members, though over time some may have been resold on the open market. The second figure is a World War I Canadian General Currie, set number 10073. My figure is number 196 of 250. A more limited edition than the Queen's Ranger, perhaps rare in terms of the subject. I think this and the Ranger fall into the sweet spot of the limited edition category versus calling it rare. Currie is not a figure other makers are going to take up, and again, this was available only to OMSS members. And maybe over time, these figures could be rare. Here's a flashback from the 1980s. Britain's Life Guards number 5184 and Royal Marines number 5289. We know how many of these specific sets were made because Britain's tells us, 7,000. My lifeguards are number 2367 of 7,000. The Royal Marines are 620 of 7,000. In this hobby's marketplace, these sets are hardly limited and certainly not rare. Just go to a toy soldier auction, shows, and or a sale by private collectors. These sets can be found regularly. If you want one, just wait a week. In my opinion, this is a case of Britain's marketing department preying upon the credulity of buyers. I grant you that the presentation and packaging of these sets is above average, but I was buying the figures not because of the marketing. Or maybe in the end that is exactly what I bought. Either way, stamping something limited and then selling thousands is not limited in any universe. Here are more limited sets, but these are from King & Country, and we can debate more concisely if these are rare or could be rare over time. This is the Kriegsmarine Seehund KM010, which are limited to a production run of 750 sets. My two are numbers 159 and 272. Now these are nicely detailed, and I'm glad I purchased them. I think they cover a unique facet of this hobby, and with the exception of Thomas Gunn Miniatures, I'm unaware of any other contemporary maker who has made this effort to capture the submarine aspect of the hobby, and these have already appeared in episode 1. Having said that, I think this set is on the outer boundary of limited, but I'll give King & Country credit for the subject, degree of casting, painting, and production run. I showed you these World War I warbirds in episode 21, and these are King & Country's numbers FW111, FW112, and FW113 respectively. These were limited to production runs of 150 planes each, so here are 3 of 450. King & Country has been producing aircraft from its earliest days, and some of us have or can remember the solid mahogany warbirds it sold. Should have bought those when I had the chance in 1992. Regardless, the company, like some other makers, continues to introduce aircraft from time to time, and they are done nicely and add another dimension to any collection, as there are also other figures and items which are made to complement the aircraft. I like the look of these biplanes, and I often wonder why King and Country did not make World War I Allied aircraft as well. But on the subject at hand, I would call these biplanes a better definition of a limited edition. Along these lines, I have this set I bought from King & Country's store in Hong Kong in 1992. I've shown these before. It's the first of the few RAF pilots, and while I have two sets, only one is boxed with a certificate, and that is 350 of 1,000. So again, while it might be limited according to K&C in 1992, for today's definition, not so limited. I like nostalgia figures from the late Seamus O'Wade. At the time, he made figures that filled the gap left by Britons, and he expanded the range to include military forces found in the far reaches of the then British Empire before the onset of World War I. Now the legend, and I use that term loosely, the legend, according to research I did in James Opie's book Collecting Toy Soldiers in the 20th Century, and Stuart Asquith's book, The Collector's Guide to New Toy Soldiers, make references, if not stating, that the molds of each nostalgia sets being ultimately destroyed after the limited run of, say, 80 sets. So does that make nostalgia a sought-after brand, rare, or limited? Now I ask because it has become public knowledge that Replica Metal Soldiers and Models of England now owns a number of nostalgia molds. In particular, I am partial to all and anything Canadian, and nostalgia didn't disappoint. I have a few sets, some of which you have seen already, but let me repeat myself. This is set number 297 of the Governor General's Bodyguard, today known as the Governor General's Horse Guards, and this set appeared in episode 54. Next is a partial set of number 165 Quartermaster Hall and the Chebucto Greys, an outfit found in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The Greys are an obscure formation in Canadian military history. Now here's a picture I found of the uniform, and I think nostalgia got it right. This last set is number 144 Mohawk Institute Cadets. What I want you to see here is the size of the figures. Remember, these cadets would not be adults, hence the reduced size of the figures. There is more information about these cadets and their history at the website, which I'll leave a link to in the description. I urge you to read it, and perhaps you might gain some insight into why Wade chose to make these cadet figures, and the contribution and sacrifices made by the people of Brantford, Ontario, and specifically the Six Nations to World War I. Lastly, I have a pair of set number 247 Royal Canadian Regiment 1898. I likely need another 6, but where I'll find them I don't know. But these are in the slouch hat, something likely seen during the RCR's participation in the Second Boer War. So we all have a bucket list. That likely includes unlimited funds or unlimited display cabinets, that sort of thing. My bucket list is, well, limited. I had seen and read of Hot Engines Castor Oil, or HECO, and I won't give a history lesson. Suffice to say that this British firm was based on handmade tin airplanes, tanks, vehicles, and the like, which are rarely seen as these items are no longer made, and those that appear on the market are usually where I'm not. Recently I had a rare opportunity to purchase these two pieces. Now, agreeing on a sale price was not the issue. Determining one was. Again, the issue of rarity arose, and this led me to reflect on how this would or would not apply to these items. Maybe I'm wrong, and these are rare, but in the sense that they are in private collections, were limited in numbers, and are no longer made. But I believe that in the years to come, as collections come onto the market, we are bound to see more Hecko than we have in the last 10 years. This biplane is unique. In my opinion, which I shared with the seller, the Royal Army Medical Corps did not have aircraft in World War I, and given the, shall we say, airworthiness of these first-generation biplanes, would not be anyone's choice to use in the service of medical first responders. No, I think the maker was being whimsical and simply took what appears to be a World War I SPAD fighter and painted the RAMC livery on the side and added a casualty from perhaps an ambulance set. But that's just my opinion. The Rolls-Royce armored car named Warrior is splendid. I don't know another word for it. It's a joy to own and will take a pride of place in my display. On that note, I would like to thank the seller for their generosity in allowing me to purchase these, which were in his father's collection. So again, thank you, DP. Lastly, I have this set that I was saving for a future video, but I'll show you it here. This is Pride of the Nation number 0077. It was made to commemorate the Royal Regiment of Canadian Artillery's participation in the 150th anniversary at Buckingham Palace of the changing of the guard ceremonies. Pride of the Nation is a long-established maker of toy soldiers, and to my knowledge, this is one of only 2 sets ever made. I think that makes it rare. Would you agree or disagree? Leave your thoughts in the comments. So, have I answered what is rare? I don't think so. There's just not enough quantitative information out there to say with any confidence. I think rare is a term that many of us, not all, but many, are not qualified to make with respect to our collections. It is entirely speculative and partially based on sentiment or marketing. Is something rare because of a quirk in the painting or manufacturing process? Or is it because the maker no longer exists or the run so limited? And does rare translate into higher prices? Not always. Because pricing can be so volatile from one year to the next, perhaps in some cases the answer is yes. And to that I would add, caveat emptor. So what does that say about the term limited edition? In my opinion, the use or abuse of that rests solely on the shoulders of the makers. Lord knows there has been enough negative comments and rolling of eyes about this marketing tool. In this current environment, when every toy soldier collector in the world could fit in a hockey arena, and we all don't collect the same thing, limited production runs need to be just that, limited, and not a run of, say, 1,000 sets or a rehashing of a paint scheme from winter to summer camo. I'll say no more. Everyone has an opinion on this. I hope this episode sparks some discussion with your fellow collectors, leads you to make a more informed purchase, and helps you with the hunt for that special, dare I say, rare figure or set. Until next time, keep collecting.